Outside of the US, what do you see as major potential market shifts in 2025? What should we consider and keep in mind?
In the non-U.S. market, I mean, let's start on the private equity and private credit sides. The U.S. market is clearly the largest of the markets in those two areas. Yet, when you look at, for example, European buyout, it has typically performed as well, if not better, than U.S. buyout. So from an investor perspective, you have to be looking at these markets and figuring out how do you want exposure to them. And presumably, as private credit becomes a larger share of the US market, it will increasingly become a larger share of the European market. With that said, and I know it's going to sound like a home bias because I'm in the US, if you have a situation where the US is probably growing a little bit faster than most other parts of the world, Europe in particular, then it probably will favor a US private equity or private credit environment. And I suspect that will be the case for the next couple of years. But again, as Europe begins to develop a little more energy independence, as Europe begins to become more of a player in the AI sphere, then I think you will continue to see opportunities around Europe. Asia's a little trickier in the sense that this is the first time in my career where you invest depends on where you're located. As a US investor, it's very challenging to invest in China because you don't know what the rules are, either in China or in the US. And so I think there is an enormous opportunity for non-US investors to be investing in Asia, China in particular, because there is relatively less capital that will be flowing from the US and parts of Europe into China. So again, it depends where you're located in terms of how you're going to invest around that. And as Blaine has pointed out, the multiples outside the US are lower. So you are getting companies that are comparable in some cases to US companies in terms of the industries they play in at cheaper prices. And that does matter at some point. The other place where I don't think it matters where you're investing because the opportunity set is so large is infrastructure. I think there, while there are interesting opportunities in the US, it is much more of a global place to invest. And I don't think that you have this situation where the US happens to be, like in credit and buyout, a larger place, therefore it takes more market share. I think infrastructure will increasingly, as it has been, be a much, much more global opportunity set.